Fall is here, except where I live. It's not fall. I've been wanting to do this video for a while actually because I know it's fall everywhere else, and these are some of my very, very favorite scents. But I put a lot into making these videos. I test them for a couple of days, take some notes, look up the year they came out, who made them, blah, 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 blah. But I just couldn't do that when it was so, so hot. It's still hot, but fall's still here. And I just want to get this out there for everybody. I'm the Hooded Lid. Welcome to my channel. So I have here 4 perfumes that are some of my very, very favorites. I love woody, warm, incensey, vanilla-y, just everything that I associate with fall. I'm not a vanilla person, but in the fall I love tonka bean and I love vanilla as long as it's not too sweet. But there is sweetness in most of these. So if you don't like the sweet stuff, you might want to click off. If you do like this kind of stuff, keep on watching. Let's get into it. Let's start off with the prettiest bottle. You know, when you don't know where to start, this is Guerlain. It is their line Art of Materials, which is also in French, but Art of Materials I can actually say. This is Tonka Imperiale. I love this so much. I'm going to be saying that about everything because pretty much everything I do love so much, but they're all different, you know. The Tonka Imperiale does open with something a little bit green, but not green in the sense of galbanum green. It's not a bitter green. It doesn't smack you in the head. And it doesn't last for a long time either. I'd say about 10 minutes and that goes away. But while this is a warming perfume, it's not a heavy perfume. It's not too warm. It's not being in a, it's more like a cashmere blanket than being in a sleeping bag, if that makes sense. Let me tell you a little bit about it. This was introduced in 2010. Terry Wasser was the nose on this, and I wonder if he's actually the house nose because he has a lot of Guerlains to his credit. The notes are bergamot, which is a citrus, almond, which I love almond. It's oftentimes associated with, I can't remember what it is, heliotrope. They have that same kind of thing. Rosemary, which gives it a nice, that could be the greenness coming out in the very beginning, but I don't smell rosemary per se. Jasmine, can't say I really get the jasmine, so it's probably way back there. Tonka bean, yeah, I get that. Tobacco, yeah, I get that. I love the tobacco scent. Frankincense, cedarwood, and pine. What's so interesting about this is, well, there's the tonka bean I'm getting and the tobacco I'm getting. I love the tobacco scents. I don't think the tobacco scents are actually from tobacco flower, which is quite sweet, but it could be. I just don't think it is. I think it's more of, it's evoking tobacco than actually is tobacco, but it has really lovely warm scent to it, and it's in 2 of the things that I've chosen today. The frankincense is just a whisper, just a thread, and after hours of wearing this, if you put your nose up to your hand or wherever you sprayed it, you get the whisper of the incense, but it's not an incense fragrance. I have many fragrances that really scream incense from top to bottom. This one, it's just a whisper, just a thread throughout. It's very comforting instead of religious. You know, it doesn't make you think about going to a high church, and it doesn't make you think about being in some retreat where you're meditating for 6 days on a fast. It's just a lovely, gentle thread of incense. But what really stands out for me is the tonka and the tobacco with a little bit of the greenness in the front. It's so well balanced, and there's an effervescence to it. There's a sparkle to it, and that helps to make it not too warm, not too cloying, even though this would be great and is great in very cold weather. And mind you, I live in Los Angeles, so for me cold weather is like 30s in the 30s. It's not too much if the weather's a little warm. This is the one of the ones I've been testing during this heat, and it didn't kill me. where oftentimes the big heavy things really kill me. This isn't big and heavy, but it's still warm and it's still fall-like. It has that sparkle, like I said, so it's just, it doesn't kill you. Still, in the spring, I don't want to go this direction. I'm going to go a little bit more fresh, a little bit more floral. And this, I'm not getting a lot of floral out of. I love this so much. It's so comforting. It's so yummy, and it's so edible. I want to eat it. It's just lovely, perfectly balanced, very well done. If you like the tobacco and the tonka bean, this is one you really need to check out. The next one is my very first Serge Lutens, and it is Chergui. I think Chergui is actually pretty well known. I'm not sure if it's the most famous. It's not very controversial. That's a hard word for me to say, but it's so beautiful. Christopher Sheldrake did this. Now, I don't know. They say Christopher Sheldrake does all of them, and I don't know if he really does, if they kind of farm this out or work with other people. But it's so beautiful. Now, it's a little related to the Guerlain because tobacco is very prominent here, but this is more honeyed. It's a little bit more sweet, but it's not sweet from vanilla. It is like a, to me, it evokes a cherry pipe tobacco kind of a scent. It's not sweetly fruity, it's not cherry, but that's what it evokes for me. It has an amorphous structure to me. When I smell this on somebody, I don't think that it is a classical perfume with a classical structure. Instead, it's more like a cloud around somebody. And if worn too aggressively, it can be a little too much, a little off-putting. But as a skin scent, just a little bit, it's incredibly comforting, and I think it's sexy. And I go in the middle of the road. I don't wear it as a skin scent because I do want to smell it as I'm going about my day because it gives me so much joy. Let me tell you a little bit about the notes. Chergui debuted in 2001 by Serge Lutens. Christopher Sheldrake was the perfumer. The notes are hay sugar. I'm not sure what that is. It's not H-E-Y sugar, it's hay sugar. Iris, rose, honey, musk, tobacco, amber, and sandalwood. For me, it's the honey tobacco that really, really stands out. I don't get the iris in it, but it could certainly use maybe a little bit more if you wanted to temper the bigness of it. It's so hard to explain. It's not big in, like, you know, Diva. Well, that's big. There's some big perfumes out there. It's not big in that way. I think it's a very nice balance of the iris and the rose, but they're not the main players. They are behind the scenes, just kind of keeping everything a little more low-keyed. Sandalwood is my favorite wood, but I would have to say I'm not getting a huge sandalwood out of this. Just a little bit. Again, it's just a thread throughout. And the amber, I would say that the amber is also just a little bit. It's not an effervescent. It doesn't have a sparkle in the front or in the back. And I find amber often has this effervescent kind of glowing quality to it. And I don't get that here in this perfume. It might have more of a base amber instead of a glowing amber, if that makes sense at all. Sometimes the things I say, because I'm not a perfumer, I understand perfumes, I understand ingredients, but what I'm giving to you is the lay person, what do I think of these, so you can decide if you want to go look at them. To me, I'm just going to leave it at this: honeyed, chewy tobacco. That's what it is. I adore this, and it does winter and fall perfectly well. Now I want to talk about something that I only have a decant of. I don't have the bottle to show you, and things have changed with it, and I haven't smelt the change, but it's beautiful in the fall, and that is Chanel Bois d'Iles. This has gone through some stuff recently. Initially this came out as an EDT in 2007, and the notes are the same as the notes as the current iteration. The current iteration came out in 2016 and it's an EDP. I have read that it takes a few minutes for it to get there, but it does smell very much like the original EDT. And this does have that Chanel effervescence to my nose. It doesn't say, oh yes it does. It has aldehydes. So it has the aldehydes. I'm not a huge fan of aldehydes, but here it's tempered, it's agreeable, it's lovely. I used to use this, you know, on Sundays I would take a nice soft bath, I would scrub my feet, I'd put on a mask, I'd put on a flannel nightgown, and I put on my Bois d'Iles. And that's when I wore it. It was comforting and warming and beautiful. But for me, I never wore it out in public. Now that could be because all I had was a decant and I wanted to use it very sparingly. But honestly, I have enough. I think I have 15 mil. I could wear it out in public if I wanted to, but I didn't want to. It was like my personal scent for a special evening of self-care. And in fall and winter, that was something that I did every weekend. It's really a beautiful, beautiful scent. Let me tell you a little bit about the notes. Aldehydes, bergamot, neroli, and peach. I don't get the peach in this, but I almost never get the peach. Peach is used in a lot of perfumes and I just never smell it. I can smell it when it's up to my nose and I'm biting into it, but I have a feeling peach in perfume often goes through something that changes the structure. Jasmine, rose, lily of the valley. You don't really get the lily of the valley in it myself. Iris, ylang ylang. Vetiver, sandalwood, benzoin, and musk. It's such an interesting composition. The vetiver is usually quite arid and dry, and I do get a little bit of a dryness, but predominantly what I'm getting from this is aldehydes and sandalwood, and the sweetness of the iris and the rose. Maybe a little bit of the ylang. I can't say that I'm getting the white florals at all, the ylang ylang and the jasmine, but I do find this just to be, for me personally, it's just an intimate, private scent to please yourself, to center yourself, to calm yourself. It's warming but sparkling at the same time. For me, I don't want to wear it out. I don't know why, but it's absolutely beautiful. They're only sold in Chanel boutiques. If it interests you, I suggest you go to a Chanel boutique and take a sniff. It's one of the better out of that line. When I first started getting really into perfume in a bad way, and I was going to scent bar like 3 times a week, this is the first perfume that I actually ran out of and repurchased. I think it's one of the only that I've ever run out of. You know what else I ran out of and repurchased? This one. So these two are pretty high up for me in the fall and winter. This, I'm not sure if it's still made anymore. It's not at Scent Bar, but I did go to the Parfumerie Generale's site, and it's still on their site, so it's still being made. I just don't know how exactly you can get your hands on it if you live in North America. But this is called Cadjmere, number 18. It's part of a number series by this brand, and this is such a delight. Again, it's sandalwood. I love sandalwood, in case you haven't figured that out. So this first came out in 2007, and it's myrtle branch sap, red tangerine, Kenyan cypress resin, coconut milk accord, sandalwood, ambrette seed, and vanilla. There is predominantly, again, it's sandalwood to me. But this milky coconut accord is so yummy and interesting and just delicious. You get the ambrette seed, there's a little bit of a bite with the ambrette seed and the tangerine, red tangerine. It doesn't read to me as a citrus necessarily, but a sharp bite, but not as sharp as a galbanum bite. And then immediately the sandalwood. Right up front, the sandalwood stays throughout. It takes about 15 minutes before the coconut milk accord comes in. And it's not sweet coconut, it's a milkiness that is, there's a sweetness underneath it. I don't find the vanilla to be prominent in this. It's not a vanilla accord to me. I think it's just tempering everything and kind of evening it all out. but the top is the ambrette for sure. A little bit of the bitterness from that, along with the tangerine, which I recognize in the bitterness, not in the sweetness, and not really in a citrus sense. And while there are 3 woods in here, I'm predominantly getting the sandalwood. I really can't say much about this because I just love it. The fact that I repurchased this, I think that might say everything. I can't put my finger on it, and maybe that's part of my love for it. It just makes me feel so good. I love it when I take off my sweaters at the end of the day and I get another whiff because it's been permeating in my sweater all day. I love the coziness that it gives me. It's not too warm, but it is warm. I think that ambrette seed at the top kind of helps cool it down a little bit, so it's nicely balanced. It really lays straight in the middle. Oh, there's a bird in the backyard. It doesn't sing too high and it doesn't sing too low, to quote the bird. And it's just comforting and delicious and uncomplicated. I would say that it is a traditional structure, but it doesn't hit you with a traditional nature, if that makes sense. This is not a Guerlain. It's not powerful. It's not going to hit you over the head. It's not prim and proper, but it's also not hippy-dippy. You know, in the middle, I would say it might be rich hippie. That's what it is. It's so beautiful. It's one of my very favorites, and if you can find some, I think it's really well worth a sniff at the very least. By the way, I want to tell you what Parfumerie Generale has to say about it. A delicate and refined meeting of precious rosewood, floral and spicy, with soft and warm sandalwood. A creamy harmony, a perfume tender and caressing like a cashmere shawl. And you know what? Yeah, I agree. And finally, it's not my favorite, but it is very, very nice, especially in the fall, and worth mentioning. And I'm not sure how to pronounce this. I've been pronouncing it wrong my whole life, or else the person that I looked up to see the pronunciation, because they're British, they're pronouncing it wrong, because this is French, and they're saying it's Van Cleef and Arpels. And I always thought it was Arpels. Van Cleef and Arpels. Orchidee Vanille. This was introduced in 2009. I couldn't find who the perfumer was. It's mandarin, lychee, bitter almonds. Again, I love me the almond. Chocolate, Bulgarian rose, violet, vanilla, cedar, tonka bean, and musk. So it's in that same family, but it doesn't live exactly in the same place. To me, this isn't as full-bodied as the other ones, and I find that that could be because the florals are a little bit more prominent than in the other scents. I did find out who the perfumer was. It's Randa Hamami, who also did Cruel Gardenia by Guerlain and Epic Man by Homage. So he's done some stuff for sure. I think it's the mandarin and the lychee and the rose and the violet that really changed this from smelling like everything else in its character than these. While these are more of woody or tobacco-y or chewied or honeyed, this one has more of that fruit nature and more of the floral nature in it. It's perfectly lovely. It's just not my favorite. I've used it for sure, but compared to these others, which I love so, so much, not as much. To me, unlike the Cadjmere and unlike the Chergui, this one to me is a more classical structure, more similar to the Guerlain, but I like the Guerlain better. And I absolutely get the floral out of it right away. It does have a sweetness to it. Like all of these have some kind of sweetness, I don't feel the sweetness is coming from the vanilla necessarily. I do think it's probably coming from the lychee and the chocolate. Now, I am not recognizing this as, ooh, chocolate, but if it is, it's not milk chocolate, it's bitter chocolate, and it's not too bitter. And oddly, this has a cooling nature to it, where these others to me have a very warming nature. This doesn't feel like a cashmere shawl. It doesn't feel like a sleeping bag either. It's almost better for a segue from winter to spring than from fall into winter, because there's a little bit of coolness and a little bit of floral and a little bit of fruity in here. But it's not predominantly fruity or floral. I'm just kind of comparing it to these others and how the nature of this one is a little bit different. So if you find these others to be too warming, too much for you, or too much vanilla, I think this would be a really, really nice way to go. It's not too vanilla, even though it is called a vanille. Or maybe it's more like vanilla extract than the vanilla after sugar has come into it. So it's not the sweet vanilla. That's probably the better way to take a look at it. So there you go. These are 4 really beautiful fragrances. If you're looking for something in the fall that you haven't looked at before, I love these. And they live near my heart. It's a matter of when you wake up in the morning, which one do you want to smell like? You know what I mean? Because they're all a delight. They all live in the same family, but they all have slightly different characters. It's, you know, like they're brothers and sisters, they're kids, and one is a little more bright, like this one, a little more effervescent. One is a little just like a cloud, a little bit amorphous, dark and chewy, but not too dark. One of them is more milky and comforting and like a cashmere blanket. And one of them is a little bit more fruity, a little bit more floral, not quite as warming and deep as the other ones. And it just depends. What do you want to smell like on any given morning? Or what do you want your clothes to smell like on any given morning? That helps you to determine which one that you're going to. Well, I hope this was helpful to you. I hope I've given you some ideas. If you're hankering for something new for the fall, I think these are beautiful scents you might want to check out. I want to thank you for spending a little time with me. I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you come back again. In the meantime, I'm wishing you a great day.